You may remember the first lecture in this series enabled us to define what fitness actually means by introducing the health-related components of fitness, namely cardiovascular fitness, muscular endurance, strength, flexibility and body composition. Individually and together, these components affect our health, our quality of life and indeed our longevity. Dr. Pamela Douglas, a medical researcher at Duke University, has said that if you're well, how long you can exercise is more important than any other variable in determining how you will live. But what do we know about how well we are or for how long we can exercise? It's universally acknowledged that you should see your doctor before starting a new exercise program, and I totally endorse that position. But you've probably noticed that the need for accurate assessment has spawned an entire industry of equipment and protocols within both the world of medicine and the fitness industry. You may well have undergone one or two such assessments at your local health clinic or, once your doctor has given you the all clear, at your local gym. Now, being able to record test scores for each of the fitness components is incredibly valuable. But why? Well, because doing so allows us to predict the risk of injury, in addition to giving us a benchmark to begin appropriate interventions such as exercise or diet. And we can then use these benchmarks to understand and measure the effectiveness of these interventions. So the aim of this lecture is to open the lid on this intriguing world of fitness testing, to gain an appreciation of the methods, scores and implications. We will also show you a number of tests you can do at home, which will importantly allow you to check whether your exercise regime is moving you closer to your goals. The measurement of health-related fitness components is a fundamental step in the design and management of any exercise program, with the American College of Sports Medicine declaring that it's important for many reasons. Firstly, in educating people about their present fitness levels in relation to published norms. Assessment can also provide information that is helpful in developing a specific exercise program. Perhaps we can design a program that's devised to address certain weak areas. Also, gathering baseline and follow-up data allows for an evaluation of your progress to be made. And being able to set quantified fitness goals, i.e. improved scores, can act as a great motivator in exercise adherence. So, let's begin with cardiovascular fitness. According to an international study by Feng J. He and Graham A. McGregor, raised blood pressure is the major cause of death in the world. In most countries of the world, more than 80% of adults are at risk from their blood pressure. In the US, for instance, heart disease is the primary cause of death and disability. Now, to put these statistics into context, brace yourself for this, around every 25 seconds, a US citizen will have a heart attack. And about every minute, somebody will die from one. It's a sobering thought. Now, heart disease can result from a number of contributory factors, and these can be split into two groups: those proven to be closely associated with an increased risk, and those that are just loosely linked. So the major risk factors include family history, high blood pressure, high cholesterol level, smoking, sedentary lifestyle and diabetes. None of those come as a surprise, I'm sure. Now, the following are suspected to be contributory factors, but their impact is not so strongly suspected. And these include things like sex, age, obesity, diet, stress, and alcohol abuse. So let's talk about blood pressure, since it's such a critical measure of cardiac health. Your resting blood pressure is a measure of the force exerted on the walls of the arteries, dependent on the amount of blood pumped and the resistance within the blood vessels. It's a valid indicator of heart health status, as readings outside the published normal ranges can be indicative of a higher risk of cardiovascular disease. Now, your blood pressure reading is made up of two components. The first is known as the systolic pressure, and this is the pressure inside your arteries as the heart is actually pumping. The second is the diastolic pressure, and this measures the pressure inside your arteries when the heart is between beats, i.e. during the relaxed phase of the cardiac cycle. Now, blood pressure is measured in millimeters of mercury, mmHg, you may have seen this. It's recorded with the systolic number first, followed by the diastolic number. So the pumping number is first, followed by the resting number. Hope that makes sense. An average reading will be somewhere in the region of 120 for the systolic and 80 for the diastolic. And readings above 140 and 90 are referred to as being moderately hypertensive and carry some degree of risk. Now, readings above 160 and 95 indicate a high degree of risk and suggest that remedial action is required. Now, the acceptable values for blood pressure may vary slightly according to different organisations, but the World Health Organization suggests the following. Your blood pressure is considered high if the systolic pressure is over 160 and the diastolic is over 95. You may hear this called stage 2 hypertension. The next stage is high normal, also called stage 1 hypertension. And for this range, the systolic is between 140 and 59, and the diastolic between 90 and 94. Normal blood pressure, usually referred to being under 140 for systolic and under 90 for diastolic. And if your blood pressure is low, the systolic is under 90 and the diastolic is under 60. Now, if it's low, that may not be a problem. It may simply be because you're working out regularly. Whilst blood pressure gives an indication of the heart's function at rest, measuring cardiovascular fitness will indicate the ability to perform dynamic movements using several muscle groups at a set intensity for a period of time. And this can provide a good indication of risk of heart disease. So, how do we measure cardiovascular fitness? The key value we search for is what's called the maximum oxygen uptake, i.e. it's your body's ability to take on board oxygen, transport it to the working muscles, and it reflects the working capacity of both the heart and the lungs, but also relies on the circulation of the blood. Now, in the laboratory, this would be measured using a graded exercise test on a treadmill, whereby the intensity gradually increases, that could be the speed of the treadmill or the incline, until you can't continue. And specific breathing apparatus called a Douglas bag is used to analyse the gases you breathe in and out. Now, while this might be the most accurate way of measuring maximal oxygen uptake, it requires costly equipment and smart cookies to ensure the protocols are strictly adhered to and then to make some sense of the results. As you can imagine, exercising to complete fatigue is not the most pleasurable of experiences. Trust me, I've been there. So in gyms, the process is to test performance at a sub-maximal level and then to extrapolate the results to estimate your full-out capacity. And there are a number of ways to do this, but a cycle test is the most common method, whereby extra load or resistance is incrementally increased through applying pressure onto the wheel as you cycle. Now, those of you involved with sports teams may be familiar with the bleep test, whereby you shuttle run between usually two cones placed 20 metres apart. The idea is you run in times with the bleeps that are pre-recorded on a CD, and as the test progresses, this time between bleeps decreases, and we measure the point at which you fail to keep up with the pace. And again, this is a test to failure, so it's not ideal, nor indeed welcomed by everyone. To measure your cardiovascular fitness at home, you can try the following procedure. Now, this test requires a step of 12 inches in height. That's the highest setting on the Reebok Step platform for reference. Now, you need to complete 24 steps per minute, and a metronome set at 96 beats if you have a metronome, or fitness music, if you have any, often has the speed on it. We're using an iPhone app with a metronome that helps us to set that speed. Peter's going to show you the technique now. You need to make sure that each step is up, up, and down, down. If we take one step for me, please. Let's make sure we get the whole of the foot on the board and step up. Nice and tall, we're extended through the legs, and down, staying close to the step. Now, you can change legs if you want or stay on the same lead leg. It really doesn't matter. The test lasts for just 3 minutes, after which you need to sit down quickly and locate your pulse. Now, if you have a little problem with that, have a go now before we start. Either at the radial pulse, or we can try that at the carotid, whichever works for you. Actually, you'll find after the test it'll be beating a little bit, so it'll be easier to find, okay? So, why don't we try the test? As if by magic, let's have a metronome beating for us. Lovely. So our pace is going to be up, up, down, down, up, up, just walking. Okay, so, Peter, I'm hoping you're ready. Stopwatch at the ready, 3 minutes, and we'll begin our up, up in 4, 3, 2, let's go. Up, up, down, down, up, up, down, down. Fabulous. Let's keep that pace going. And up, up, down, down. Brilliant. Just 3 minutes. So if you lose that pace with the metronome, try to pick it back up again as quickly as possible. Down, down, up, up. Brilliant. Only 15 seconds to go. So get ready. You're going to take a quick seat at the end. And you're going to find that pulse as quickly as you can. Mind your step. Nearly there. You're into the last 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And hold it there. We can stop the metronome. We can stop the clock. Find that pulse for me, please. Start counting. Now. So I'm after just 60 seconds here. Just 60 seconds. You need to feel very carefully for that pulse. Should be easy enough to find. Halfway there now. Keep going. Keep counting. Last few seconds. And we'll stop now. And the number, please.
118.
118. Fabulous, well done. Now, 118 on our chart puts us just a little bit above average, which is because I happen to know that Peter already exercises regularly, and that's why we scored just a little bit above average there. So there you have a test to enable you to establish your cardiovascular fitness, and you can do it at home. Next, we look at muscular endurance and strength, as these are vital indicators of our ability to perform everyday activities without fatigue, and so imply the degree of independence we might retain in our later years. Also, good muscular fitness has been shown to decrease the risk of developing a number of conditions, such as low back problems and osteoporosis. Now, muscular endurance is defined as the ability of a specific muscle, or perhaps a group of muscles, to repeatedly perform an exercise. It's essential in the deeper postural muscles to enable us to maintain good postural alignment when carrying out daily tasks. Surprisingly, the two most common tests for quantifying muscular endurance that are used in the lab and on the sports field can both be tried at home, as they're based on effort in basic exercises, namely the press-up and the sit-up. The press-up test measures how many standard press-ups you can do in 1 minute, and this will give an indication of your endurance capability in the chest, the shoulders, and the arms. Here's the procedure for the press-up test. We assume a prone position on the floor, with the hands about shoulder width apart, as Peter's doing now. The back straight, just a gentle curve in the lower spine, and we've got a normal natural curve in the back of the neck as well. Now, the aim of the exercise is to lower yourself down to the point where the upper arm, as Peter's doing now, is parallel to the floor, and then back up, extend, hold it there, try not to lock out the elbows at the top, okay? Now, this is the way we're going to do this. For guys, we're going to be, in the full press-up position, but for the girls, we would be on the knees with the feet lifted. It's simply, how many press-ups can we do? Take a quick rest. How many press-ups can we do consecutively? Or, if we can keep going, can we go for a minute? If so, how many? So, I'm ready with the stopwatch because I'm sure you're going to keep going for a minute. If you're ready in the position, please, Peter, and away we go. And 2, brilliant. And 3, keep the abs in tight. And 4, not too low. And up, 5, go with a nice pace. And 6, don't go crazy. And 7, you're doing well. And 8, remember I feel your pain. And 9, that's good. And 10, keep going, you're doing really well. It's 11, well done. Or I might call that one 12, but that's probably about done. Well done, fabulous, take a quick rest. Now, looking at our chart, I can tell that that puts you in you're in the fair category. Didn't do quite as well as the cardiovascular test, but we're still in the fair category, so there's room for improvement there, but well done. The sit-up test measures how many full sit-ups you can perform in 1 minute, giving an indication of the strength, endurance strength, in the abdominal muscles and also in the hips. The procedure for this test is as follows. We assume a lying down position. The arms are crossed across the chest, the feet about a foot away from the backside, about hip width apart, so the knees are bent. Maintain that comfortable spine position. If I could just get one sit-up, please. We come up to the top, elbows touch the knees, we lower back down. Perfect example, well done, Peter. Make sure the shoulders touch the floor on the way down. Now, ideally, we're looking for how many we can do in a minute, the same as with the press-up test. But I would advise you to start at a slow pace rather than go like crazy to begin. So, shall we try? 1 minute. Are we ready? And away we go. That's 1. Well done. Good. And up. 2. Fabulous. Try to keep the feet on the floor if you can. And up. 3. Well done, well done. That's 4. We're doing well. Keep going. And up. 5. That's good. And up. Remember to keep breathing while you're doing it. 7. Good. Excellent. We're halfway there. Keep going. Good. Keep going. Try and keep those feet there. That's good. And again, working through the abs. Come on, come on. And remember, it's continuous. If you need to take a stop before the minute, that's your score. And up. Good. We're into the last 10 seconds. Keep going, Peter. You're doing well. Last 5. Can we get a couple more reps out there, do we think? Okay. Let me take a quick look at our score. And that puts us in average category. Sorry to call you average, but it puts us in the average category. Remember, it doesn't matter what your score is. The important point is to set yourself a benchmark so that once you start to commit to an exercise program, you can remeasure this a little later down the road and see how you're improving. In contrast to endurance, strength refers to the maximal force that can be exerted by a muscle, or indeed a group of muscles, and is not related to a time period, but it's instantaneous. In the laboratory, specific instruments known as dynamometers are used with a detailed procedure involving measurement at different joint angles. A strength can vary in the movement through a joint. A more common method, however, is that used in the gym, where the aim is to assess what's called your 1 repetition maximum for a number of exercises. Now, usually it's the bench press or the leg press, and this is quite simply a test of how much resistance you can lift just once. Now, I'm going to show you this format, although this is not something we'd use at home. Here's how the test procedure goes. Firstly, you'll warm up about 5 to 10 repetitions. It's somewhere around 50% of what we'll estimate as your maximum. Take a brief rest. Increase the load to somewhere between 60 to 80% of your estimated maximum, just to do 3 to 5 repetitions. This will ensure we're warmed up, primed and ready to go. Now begin to add a small amount of weight and then lift until we arrive at a load where we can only lift once. So ideally, we're going to add the weight on the end, take a rest and then lift. Do the same again, but in 3 to 5 attempts, try and get to that point where we reach your 1 repetition maximum. But again, since this requires a good skill level, heavy resistance equipment, and ideally spotters, people who are there to help you lift the weight when you reach your failure level, it's not really appropriate for home application. But now you know what to expect if you go to the gym to do a strength test. The next measure of health-related fitness is that of flexibility, which is the ability to move a joint through its full range of movement. As we learned in our first lecture, not only is this of value in sports performance, but also of importance in carrying out everyday activities, particularly because reduced flexibility can lead to decreased functional capability and possibly bad posture, and that is a precursor of chronic musculoskeletal injury. So just to remind ourselves, flexibility is specific to each joint, which makes the art of measuring it, something known as goniometry, quite a difficult process, with no single test being sufficient. However, That said, the sit and reach test is the most common procedure, as it measures flexibility in the hamstrings and the lower back. Now, since 4 out of 5 of us suffer from lower back trouble at some time in our lives, it's worth conducting this test as a valid measure of our health-related fitness. This test requires use of a sit and reach box and a procedure as follows. We'll gently warm up prior to the test, practicing a few preparatory stretches and movements for the lower back and the hamstring. Types of things like a little leg curl would work, a little rotation through the lower spine. A couple of minutes of that will get us nicely warmed up. We'll sit on the floor, place the feet flat against the box, extend the legs until the knees are sort of straight, and then we lean forwards to push the bar as far forwards as we can with the fingertips. The hands should ideally be overlapped, and that'll make sure that we're not rotating the hips and we're pushing evenly. To help perform the test, take a deep breath beforehand and then exhale as you bend forwards, making sure you don't bounce to try and get the higher score. Now, the good news is that we can mimic this test at home, simply, as Peter's doing now, by sitting on the floor. I'm using a bit of tape here to measure where I'm putting the heels. Yeah? The legs are outstretched, and I'm simply using a tape measure, placed on the floor to assess how far short of, which would be a minus score, or beyond the line of the heels we go. Okay? Simple to measure the results. So shall we have a little go? We cross those fingers over, take a deep breath in first, and then begin to gently bend forwards, reaching the hands forwards. Let's take a look. Fabulous. And that's a score of -2, and relax just there. And -2 puts us in, you'll be pleased to know, in the average category. You may remember our final health-related fitness component is body composition. This is an important indicator of general health, as the risks associated with being overweight are numerous. They include an increased risk of developing coronary heart disease, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, osteoarthritis, and possibly even certain cancers. In the clinical environment, measuring procedures are quite involved but prefer a good degree of accuracy. And these include, firstly, hydrostatic or underwater weighing. And this works on the basis that fat, being less dense than lean body tissue, such as muscle and bone, is more buoyant, allowing a comparison of dry land and underwater weights to be used in calculating what are fairly accurate percentages attributed to each. A second method is dual energy X-ray absorptiometry. And this is a very accurate method of measuring body composition, involving passing 2 types of X-ray through the body and a special scanner which is able to differentiate between fat, bone, and muscle tissue. Another method is near-infrared interactance, and this uses a device that shines an infrared beam on the front of the arm, with the amount of light bouncing back from the bone measured as an indication of the amount of fat present. Now, it has the advantages of being fairly inexpensive and easy to use, but it's not as accurate as the previous 2 methods. Now, in the gym, however, you're more likely to encounter the following methods of body composition evaluation. The first, skin-fold calipers. Now, using these skin-fold calipers, we take measurements at the waist, the back, and the front and rear of the upper arm. Now, within the fitness industry, this is used to generate surprisingly accurate results. More importantly, they're repetitive. So readings from the 4 sites are added together, and tables give an equivalent body fat percentage for these sums. A second method is bioelectrical impedance. This estimates body fat and involves passing a small electric current through the body and measuring the resistance to its flow. Lean tissue conducts electricity better than fat, so this is the scientific basis behind the method. So resistance to the flow of the current can be used to predict the level of body fat. The Bodystat, Tanita, Omron, these are all machines that use this technique. Now, fortunately, these are 2 procedures you can do easily at home. The technique you can use at home is the waist to hips ratio. Important because people with more abdominal fat than those who have the same percentage of fat but more evenly spread around the body are at an increased risk of premature death. So the following procedures should be used to measure this statistic. So, first of all, we're going to take the circumference around the abdomen. So the idea here is to get the tape measure around you in line with the belly button, yeah? The point of that is it gives you a reference for next time because when you come to measure it in future, the navel will be in exactly the same place. Make sure the tape is straight. Now, ideally you will measure this undressed, but if you are doing it with clothing on, make a note of clothing. If you're wearing thick clothing, you need to know that for next time. Okay? What was the score there, Peter? We then take the hip measurement, and what we're looking for here is to find, quite simply, the widest point on the hips. So you might need to move it up or down a couple of times to find that. And again, make sure, and this is where a mirror is very useful, that the tape measure is straight. Okay, so the score is... Oh, fabulous. Now, all we do then to calculate the score is divide the waist measurement by the hip measurement. Now, a score of greater than 0.94 for men and 0.82 for women is indicative of a significantly increased risk of health issues. And we actually came in at 0.92, so that's a healthy score, you'll be pleased to know. In summary then, we now know that fitness can be divided into two categories, namely skill-related components and the more important health-related components, which are cardiovascular fitness, muscular endurance, strength, flexibility, and body composition. What we have discovered here is that there is a battery of tests that can be used to measure these indicators, from which we can predict risk of lifestyle disease and, more crucially, decide upon suitable tactics to improve scores in these vital parameters. So rather than fumbling in the dark, dietary and particularly exercise advice can be prescribed precisely once these values are established to ensure you're always moving closer to your health and fitness goals. If you're concerned about your current health status or have already taken the decision to begin an exercise regime, then these tests are the perfect starting point. And since I've shown you ways to do this at home, there's nothing to stop you getting started today. Remember, the long journey to fitness begins with a single step. And that first step should definitely be to set your benchmarks with these tests. And then you can monitor your progress on that successful journey.